large role, kind of at what point because that's a huge aspect of the council now, at what point that became a more important kind of constituency?
I guess I would say at the beginning it played not much of a role at all. I think the federal history establishment, which of course was not that, although, you know, the Park Service does deal with that sort of thing. The Park Service historians, though they're federal historians, were not so important in those early years to the founding of the Society for the History of the Federal Government as the military historians and the agency historians. I honestly, someone who came along later would have to answer the question of just when the museum and that sort of element got more into it.
I think part of that occurred when Dwight Caseley was the chief historian of the Park Service. No, before that?
I think it was before that.
But started to bring people in to professional organizations that they really hadn't played much of a role before, and I think that some of the consulting people had done CRM work, but that was Darlene had done it. Darlene Roth, who's down here, one of the who I term the mother of us all, at least for consulting, that she was involved, but it was never a major part of the major discussion.
There were at least 3 people at Montecito who did represent historic preservation, but I don't think museums were in attendance at Montecito. But Carol Purcell was there, and a fellow from San Diego was involved in this.
Larry McGrath?
He's Fullerton. No, it was
Tom Fuller?
No, I can't think of his name.
No, he's from
San Diego.
Yeah,
Was involved in the establishment of the historic district.
Well, let me say that at the outset of this thing, as time went on in the first few years, there were people in museums who were involved in this. One of the problems I perceived was a kind of turf. Some people perceived a turf battle with the ASLH, and I used to go to their meetings, and I would argue that we should be allies, not rivals. And I think as time went on, the AASLH has had a checkered career, and they have kind of been up and down. Times they've been a very effective organization, at times they've lacked leadership. And I think during those periods they lacked leadership, some people in museums gravitated over to our organization. But hopefully it's been a good relationship, and I think that as time went on, people could see that our organization could be helpful too.
Larry Tighe is also on our board in 1981.
And he was,
that's right.
But he wasn't at AASLH. He was at North Carolina.
Yeah.
He was in North Carolina Archives.
AASLH, though, was a member, one of the early members, not the very earliest, but an early member of the National Coordinating Committee. It had very strong leadership at that time. Now I'm going to try to remember the guy's name, which I can't at this moment. But there was a turf issue, and I think that the entry into museums and that sort of thing came really through the cultural resource management side. No,
there was a parallel movement within the AAM to receive history museums as more a part of that organization, which was going on about the same time. And a nucleus of history museums, regional museums, was forming a kind of coalition or interest group. They have a specific subject area that developed. But the people who were in museums who were active in that organization, as opposed to considering themselves public historians, I think the identification with public history came later, after identification with urban history. And
there was so much opposition to more division within these organizations. I think it's instructive here is to say that I don't recall anyone from the Smithsonian, for example, becoming part of the federal history program until later.
In the back.
First of all, I want to thank all 3 of you and all 4 of you. Really, this has been a fascinating session, so I really appreciate all the effort you put into it. I work for the National Park Service. I've been a member of NCPH for over 20 years, and one of the things I've always liked about the annual meetings of NCPH is that they've been great gatherings of National Park Service employees and good opportunity to network within our organization. And one of the things that strikes me now is that here we're at the largest gathering of NCPH historians in the history of the organization. And I'd have to say the National Park Service presence at this conference is pretty paltry. And to me, I'm probably reading a lot into it, but I'm seeing that as indicative of the fact that I think our history programs in our organization are really at a point where they need a shot in the arm right now. But I'm kind of curious, Arnita has mentioned the National Park Service a couple of times. I'm curious if any of you would want to reflect a little bit on the history of the National Park Service as a part of NCPH and even maybe offer some speculation about the future role of the National Park Service in this organization.
Well, I've worked with a lot of organizations, as you can see from my paper, and it's quite possible that one of the things I did has perhaps by strengthening the relationship with the Organization of American Historians, filled a vacuum that is now not there. But one of the things that happened when I was at OAH in the 1990s is that Dwight P. Cakeley, becoming chief historian about 1995, recruited me and the organization to work with the Park Service. We set up a cooperative agreement, and that meant that there could be very easy consulting and other kinds of arrangements for conferences, that sort of thing, with the OAH supplying people who would come and do a review of a site, who would help organize a conference, participate in it, do consulting for a park that was looking to revise its interpretive program and that sort of thing. And they really very consciously wanted to tap into the academic expertise. Now, I think that's been good for public history. It might not have been good for the National Council on Public History. I think it's been very good for the field because what it's done, and I did that for 4 years before I moved over to Washington. I mean, you get historians at all levels, and very distinguished, top-of-the-field kind of people, as well as young people, and they go out, they work with the parks, and they discover that wonderful things are going on out there, and that if they spend some time helping with the interpretive plan of a particular park, that millions of people will see that, and it'll have a much greater impact than their next academic book. So it's been a program that, so far as I know, is still doing very well today at OAH. Could it have been done by NCPH? In 1995, maybe not. I mean, that's 10, 15 years ago. Could it be done now? Well, it's being done already. And I mean, it's one of those things. But I think the connection with the Park Service has really strengthened public history.
But what Dwight was trying to provide was a central point of leadership in the Park Service, and I think that's gone now, Bruce. At least, well, maybe not.
No, it depends on what happens.
Yes. Yeah, well,
we need a new Park Service.
Find out when you get the new chief historian.
Right.
And then stick John on him right away. Or her.